Daniel, we got Shalim, we got Jinga, Darko, Jens, hey Mark, Anita again, hey Not Hardly, Alfredo, Martin, Mark Beeson, Trev, wow, so many great people. Michael Garding, hello. Are we okay? We're getting any? Okay, looks like we had a connection issue there for a second. God bless it. Anyway, so it's all good. I'm very, very, very excited. It's great to. Hello, Andy. Hey, dude, says Wolfgang. I'm not much of a dude, but hey, dude, Wolfgang, dude. Low res, still buffering. We should be back. Hello, everybody. Hello, Julio. Hello, Soren. Hello, Raul. Bobby. We're big, we're bad, and we're back. Crowded house. Yes. So, yeah, please hit that like button if you haven't already. That'd be fantastic. The way that works is if you hit the like button, YouTube says, hey, people like this, and they send people our way. So if you haven't already, please download the multitrack. Now, I know there's quite a few Academy members here already. So this is a song called Numb Me Up by a band called Lovesick Radio. It's still going. This was a different singer. They have a new singer now. I ended up co-writing this song with them, which is fantastic. And it was a lot of fun to do. It's a really, really good song. We'll listen to it. We'll listen to the mix that we did hybrid through the console. And then we'll see if we can do it better through the in the box, by doing it in the box. We left in all the samples this time. So that means that we can blend in samples. You can download them all. You can use the samples. And it's going to be rather wonderful. Very excited indeed. So let's listen to the hybrid mix. Now, for those of you who don't know, the hybrid mix is this through the console. So I'm using some plugins and then I'm going back through the SSL. Here we go. Let's check it out.
Is this normal? How it became, and war after war after war with me. Are you satisfied the way I bleed? And war after war after war with me.
Just to hear it. I raised it up. He raised the volume a little bit. We've got to change the buffer here back to so we can play back, Eric. I don't mind the delay. I can deal with that. So I apologize, everybody. Okay. Here we go. Once more.
Is this normal? How it became, and war after war after war with me. Are you satisfied the way I bleed? And war after war after war with me. Numb me up, dumb me down.
Oh dear, buffer again. This is fun. Not. Let's get that buffer. Dum de dum. One more. Mit feeling. Yeah.
Is this normal? How it became, and war after war after war with me. Are you satisfied the way I bleed? And war after war after war with me. Numb me up, dumb me down.
Aha! We seem to be having a hardware buffering issue, which we've never had on a live stream before. First time for everything.
Numb me
Buffer-tastic. Doodle-doodle-doo.
Numb me up, dumb me down, baby, shut me up, steal the truth, hate me, I'll be yours till I die, till I die crazy, pull me in, drag me down, make me cry for you, laugh for you, break me.
We've never had this on a live stream. The first for everything. God bless it. So the hardware buffer has been reset. I am rather fearful that the hard drive is having an issue. So I apologize, everybody. Gonna have a quick look here. Doodaloo. This is called troubleshooting. Live on air. Numb me up. Dib it up, baby. Should be no problem. The hard drive has tons and tons of room on it. So we have to do the old restart of the restart. Let's do a bit of a Q&A.
But we are using camera audio.
Okay, so I've got to restart the computer though. So you're going to be able to handle all this?
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, marvelous. So let's go to a little bit of a Q&A. We're going to restart everything. Yeah, we've actually never had this happen on a live stream before. It's interesting because you know, there's always a lot of like massive hatred of Pro Tools and going, oh yeah, it crashes all the time. The weird thing is like we do a lot of live streaming where we also have like multiple softwares running in the background, and we've never had a crash. So I suppose schnizzle happens, as they say. And this is like good production. When you're producing and things go wrong, it's how you handle them. You know, it's all about how you handle them. You know, well, what we did with when you do buffering issues is you do exactly what we just did there. And the reality is like there's not much else we can do except do a hard restart, change the buffer so it's like should be running the smoothest possible. But it is what it was. George says, hi people, I'm a bit lighter raving. Audio is louder on the camera mic. Okay, we can solve this or we can sort that out. I think we can probably do. What do you need for hard drive? What do you need for a hard drive for mixing? Well, in this instance, we're using a 2 terabyte hard drive, and it should not be a problem. Should not be a problem. So I'm not entirely sure why we're experiencing it, unless there is unless there's a problem with this particular drive. You know, unfortunately, that does happen every now and then. Yeah, but it's not a Pro Tools issue. Do I like fish and chips? I love fish and chips. Do you love fish and chips? Ah, modern technology. Well, I started on tape, so I can tell you when you have a problem with the tape machine, you could lose a couple of days. I remember I was working at a studio in LA, which will remain nameless. I was working at a studio in LA, and it wouldn't punch in. The tape machine wouldn't punch in, so they had to wheel in a second tape machine and reset the whole thing up and repatch it. And we lost like an hour while they did that. And then about a year later, I went back to the same studio. We were tracking live, and then we went to do some punch-ins, and the same machine still had the problem. And it was like remarkable. We're like, wow, they still haven't fixed that machine. The studio used to have a bit of a nickname because of it. What else? Pro Tools, blah blah blah. Tim, yeah, that's a generic answer. Unfortunately, that isn't. The 9073 comes up in Pro Tools. It doesn't always mean. It's not space, it has 1.5 terabytes available. So it's not actually space that's causing it. You can turn the camera mic off now because they're going to get double whammy. So we changed our buffer size. Let's see what happens. Maybe this is going to turn into a Q&A while we do some transfers. Here we go. This is the place where it died before. Please show the screen. Here we go.
War after war with me. Numb me up, dumb me down, baby, shut me
It's probably a hard drive issue, which is unfortunate. Back to Q&A, please. Yeah, bit of a bummer. This does happen sometimes. French fries are actually Belgian fries. That is very true, Nathan. That is very, very true indeed. No, it's definitely not a Pro Tools thing. Unfortunately, it could be, no, we've got everything set up like we normally do on the other 1,100 live streams that we've done. This is definitely not, yeah, the flux capacitor does need changing. So let's go to Q&A mode for the time being. What on earth? Dilithium crystals, that's definitely what's happening, Poo Ninja. Can you just put that onto the hard drive, please? Copy it over. Yep. Onto the desktop. Thank you very much. And so let's talk mixing. Let's do a Q&A on mixing. I'm not doing 88 miles per hour. No, definitely not. I'm not going to spend time checking the hard drive. All I know is it's not coming off the hard drive properly, so we're going to take it off and put it onto the desktop. Best thing to do is to just move on rather than spending a long time. You see, in production, it's about in production it's about how you handle problems. There's so many problems that happen when you're making records. Nothing is ever like perfect. And if you make it into a huge drama, or you've got like a lot of negativity and people are like wagging fingers and doing all that kind of expert stuff, I've seen that in the lowest form up to the highest form. I've seen all kinds of things doing it. This is a great example of how you, how you deal with those kind of things. Down me up, baby. So, but like I said before, we don't get these problems normally. I would say we've done about 1,100 live streams, and this is the first time it's ever happened. You're on camera audio, I presume?
Yep.
So, and but ask me some questions while we're doing this. Let's talk recording. Let's talk mixing. How do you remove the hazy sound in the mids and upper mids? Is it higher form of muddy? I think if there's one of the things I've noticed in a lot of mixes that we get in the academy is where things start to get really kind of aggressive in the 3 to 5K area. It gets super, too much saturation, too much distortion in there. In the wrong way. I like a bit of smoothness in there, so you might want to mess with stuff that isn't saturated, isn't distorted, and stuff that is, because you can smooth out some of those high mids, but you can also get very cloudy if everything's saturated in there. It starts to mush together too much. So it's always a balance between getting things that feel like they're glued and stuff that feels like it's separated. That's really what it's all about. How do you know when your mix is good enough? I think you have to take time away from it, take time away from your mix, and come back with fresh ears. One of the problems I had in the past was like referencing, and I didn't take any time off. I just felt like it was all about checking it on 15 different systems, and the problem for that is like I didn't give my chance for my brain to reset. So I'd hear a problem on one system, go to another system, and then repeat that problem or find a new one and get totally obsessed. Where ultimately on my main system, if I give myself a bit of a break, I would have heard all of those problems. So, that's how you know when it's ready, when you can take a break, come back to it. Because if I take a break and come back to it, I find 5 things that I have to repair immediately and can do it. As Anita says, take breaks during your project. Not Hardly says it's getting dark there and it's about to rain. Sorry about that. Do I use software to copy or just copy and paste? I'm not sure what you mean, Keith. In what aspect? Just wondering if you have any thoughts on getting a mix translator in devices like iPads, iPhones, etc. Well, one of the things that I find very interesting is, a lot of those sort of mid-late 90s through early 2000s kind of rock mixes of a lot of like emo rock and modern rock of that period was mixed by, you know, a handful of guys, and we all know the guys that mixed them, and super, super like splashy and aggressive. They really like push those cymbals like really heavily, and things were very, very bright, and none of those mixes translate anymore, because if you get your iPhone as you're pointing out here, or your iPad, all you literally hear is you know, it gets really, really bad in those high mids. So, you know, one of the things I love about Bob Horn as a mixer is he's really, really good at doing detail in high mids and high end. And you're going to find now a lot of guys, a lot of people are mixing. You know, a lot of people are mixing, and they are doing a lot of low passing and really doing heavily detailed work in it. Bob Horn's a great example of it. I know there's a lot of old school mixers that still are just like pushing 10 or 12K into everything. The thing is they're not hearing what's happening above that. But when you're, you know, my son's 13. When my son listens to music from that period of the late 90s, early mid 2000s, up to maybe 2010 or so, there's exceptions always, obviously. You listen to that music and play it back, it literally just sounds like the whole time. And it's quite unbearable. So be careful. Even if you can't hear above 12K, you know, or 15K definitely by the time you're an adult, but 12K for people a little older. Just if you don't need it there, low pass it out. Low pass out the high end. Otherwise, it's just for kids. They're going to find it unbearable. You know, and I've watched a lot of mixing by some of the older guys now, and I understand they're pushing super high end in there, and that's fine, if they have to remember that that's not going to translate anymore. So, you know, we heard a mixer recently talk about, you know, make a joke about like, oh, you know, your shaker or the tambourine, he can't hear it anymore. That's fine because you have acquired knowledge that you might not be able to hear that shaker anymore. You know, if it's like 10K and they're not hearing above 10K. But the problem is like, the last thing you want to do is be boosting that area because you may not hear it, but somebody younger is going to really, really hear it. So it's a marvelous question about translation. Really good question about high-end translation, because I'm finding a lot of stuff is not translating and kids are not enjoying some of those records. I mean, some of those records are going to have to be, probably going to have to be remixed, you know, for younger kids. Remastering might help. But ultimately, if you're getting in there with low passing, you know, electric guitars, for instance, unless you're doing some massively extreme metal, most people aren't going to want 7K and above on their electric guitars. They're going to want like the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 areas, like is the high end for an electric guitar. As soon as you go above that, it's just going to end up being splashy. It's going to have a lot of sizzle up there that you're not going to hear or need. And, well, it's on the highest buffer rate. Let's hope for the best now. We have moved it to a different drive. God bless America. So yeah, great question. Do I high pass? I do a lot of high passing and a lot of low passing. And I think if this works out okay, we'll try it on that. Let's see what happens. We go to the quote unquote problem area. There are a lot of hidden tracks that we don't need.
After war with me. Numb me up, dumb me down, baby, shut me up, steal the truth, hate me, I'll be yours, till I die, till I die crazy, pull me in, drag me down, make me cry for you, lie for you, break me, I'll be yours, till I die, till I die crazy.
Thanks, Carl. I think we're good. I think it was a hard drive issue. Unfortunately, we have used that hard drive on many other times, and it wasn't full. But you know, sometimes it takes a bit of time. I don't know which one it was. Somebody was asking. Honestly, I don't have the time or the energy to go back down there and fish it out just to hold it up. But we'll figure it out. Hopefully, now that it's just on the internal hard drive, which I don't often do, you know, we'll be good. But again, going back to the point when it comes to production and stuff, is how you handle it. You know, if I got all upset and angry and blah, 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 it doesn't make anybody feel like comfortable. And it's what's really important about what we do is that we keep a sense of calm with those around us. I mean, you know, I'll sometimes be like, Eric, you know, but ultimately it's all about handling things properly. Don't like the idea of remixing records for phone speakers. They've finished. The kids need to get better speakers. Actually, Paul, I agree. I'm not talking about the classic records, Paul. I totally understand what you're saying. I'm not talking about, you know, records of the 50s, 60s, 70s, and most of the 80s, and some of the early 90s, and some of the great stuff like Soundgarden. I'm talking about that period in the late 90s, early sort of mid 2000s, where everything... Do you remember every snare was like, pat, 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 pat was a transient designer. Every chorus was like, psss. I'm not talking about... I'll be blunt. I'm not talking about great sounding records. I'm talking about badly mixed 90s, late 90s, mid-late 90s on, where everything started to get so splashy and unbearable to listen to. It was like exciting on the radio, but to be honest, it doesn't stand up. You know, there's a lot of that stuff which was pretty hard to listen to. And, you know, some of the stuff now gets like that. I'm not talking, I understand what you're saying, Paul. There's no way. I don't want to have Bohemian Rhapsody remix. I agree. I'm talking about a period of when it was like a conveyor belt of mixing, you know, and it was less about the art, more about the commerce. We all know that. We all know the industry through the 90s to the mid, you know, 2005, 2006 had a massive boost in CD sales, and just stuff was being pummeled out, you know, and you'd buy albums and it was 10 songs that sounded the same. You know, we're talking about that period. I'm not talking about the classic albums where, you know, Bohemian Rhapsody, obviously, Night at the Opera, Revolver, great albums, So, Peter Gabriel, Hounds of Love. You know, we could name 100 amazing albums that there was so much art. I'm just talking about that conveyor belt mentality that we had for a while. The ones that really killed our industry. Yeah, no, it's okay, Paul. I'm not mad at you. I totally understand your point. I don't need those albums remixed. I don't need Genesis, you know, albums remixed. Although I think those new remixes are quite interesting. I did enjoy some of them. I haven't had a chance to get into all of those. I just don't have the allotted amount of time to do so much of this stuff. Adam, no, you know, that's Glenn's job. He can get overly fun with that. Okay. All right, Charles. Yes, hopefully it was a relatively quick fix. So let's listen to the song one more time for the kids.
Is this normal? How it became, and war after war after war with me. Are you satisfied the way I bleed, and war after war after war with me? Numb me up, dumb me down, baby, shut me up, steal the the second guessing, messing with my brain waves. I made my mind up and I'll stay. And I suppose we could go a million different ways. That I am just an animal stuck inside my cage. Do I have to lay me down 6 feet in the dirt? And do I have to kill myself for you to feel me hurt? Numb me up, dumb me down, baby, shut me up, steal the truth, hate me, I'll be yours till I die, till I die, till I die crazy. Hold me in, drive me down, and I'll get it out. Losing all, get it back, I go without his arms. I'll be yours till I die, till I die, till I die crazy.
Oh, yeah. You don't know what happened with Gobbler. Mark's online. Hey, Mark. Mark Daniel Nelson, everybody. He's the wonderful, wonderful guy that did the Kobe Calais course for free. So the tutorial's online if you haven't already checked it out. Absolutely amazing, Mark. Yeah, so Mark was saying, yeah. So what happened with, do you not know what happened with Gobbler? So Gobbler was this online service, but you know, no disrespect to Gob. I don't want to take, it's nothing personal, but they were really an intermediary because what they were is they were using Amazon, which we use as well. Amazon, we have all our courses hosted on Amazon. You know, we have most of our streaming and stuff on Amazon. And so what they were is they're an intermediary and you basically paid them to allow them to host your stuff on Amazon. Do you know what I mean? So rather than you just putting your stuff on Amazon, they were this, you know, person in the middle that charged a premium to allow you to access your stuff on Amazon. It's a big business model. I mean, it's like anything. It's like when you want to upload music, there are lots of ways that you can talk to the direct people that upload music, but then there's people that set themselves up as companies in the middle to do it for you. And sometimes it's time saving, so I understand it. But you paid a premium to Gobbler to access Amazon Web Services, AWS. Then what happened is they were making a lot of money, but then what happened is Amazon raised their prices. They raised the prices on all of us. It came up with me, you know, our hosting for Produce Like a Pro, for Pro Mix Academy, for everything went up dramatically. It just did. You know, there are costs involved. And we ate the costs, and we're still here, and we've been doing the Academy now for 4 years, and it's what happened. So what happened with them is they couldn't pay their Amazon bills. So they went back to Amazon and tried to negotiate the price down. It's all online. You can read about it. I'm not saying anything untoward. But then, so what happened, and they went back to try and negotiate it. In the meantime, everybody's audio was lost. You know, does that make my console a Merlin? Because my studio is called Spitfire? It could be. I like that. I'm going to call it Merlin. Thank you. So anyway, so that's what happened. So there was like, you know, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of people's works were just lost. So yeah, don't use, try not to use only one medium. The lesson in that is not to back up only on cloud or only on hard drive. You know, to back up things properly, you could back up on hard drive, the cloud, and DVDs and CD, whatever. Just back it up as many different ways as you can. Everybody has, yeah, I don't know about that. I don't think it was necessarily, you know, that Jeff Bezos was is at fault. You know, it's a business. It's like, you know, it's like, all I can say is that we host all our stuff on Amazon for better or worse. And yes, they put up their prices. And in 1 month, I remember it going up dramatically. But we're still doing this. You know what I mean? It's, you know, it's not, I don't know what to say. You know, I'm not trying to be critical of anybody. But definitely make sure that you don't just back up to the cloud, that you don't just use hard drives, and that you don't just use like CDs or DVDs. Back up to as many different mediums as you can. That's pretty much the lesson here. So Is that why Softube dumped Gobbler? I mean, I don't think there is a Gobbler anymore. I think they're oh, okay, sorry, Chris. Yeah. Sorry, I'm like reading questions as they go by, so sometimes I don't get the I don't use do I use any third-party software to scan hard drives for errors? No. Most of the ones I've used over the last 30 years have caused a lot more problems than they've solved. Okay, so, and I don't want to spend an hour talking about that. We can talk about that afterwards if you like. Anyway, so thank you ever so much, everybody. This is fantastic. There's 313 people online. If you do me a favor, hit the like button. Phone Noir from your black phone, Phone Noir. Yeah, I agree with Tom. He says if you don't have it in at least 3 places, it's not backed up. Yeah. No, you didn't blow it up, Mark. Somebody else asked the Gobbler question. You know, and DVDs. Yeah. So when I was working at a label, we used to back up onto digital tape. We used to back, you know, digital tape, DVDs, and hard drives. And they probably added the cloud now. And that way an album was on 4 different kinds of mediums. 4 different kinds of mediums. Thank you, Mark. We should have you mix it and do a course on this. You'd nail this. This is right up your Strasse. This is a song I wrote with the band maybe 5 years ago now. It's hard. I can't remember. So you heard the rough mix. Now there's tons and tons of drum samples in here, which you can choose to use or not use. It's really up to you guys. There's a lot of different versions here. There's a full live kit. So what we can do is we can solo the full live kit first of all, and then we'll sort of take it from there. Give me a second, just getting all the elements. So kick in. So first thing I'm gonna do is create some groups. Yeah, please hit the like button. That'd be amazing. Over 300 people watching. If you could hit like, that would be amazing. So what first of all I'm going to do here is just for my own sanity, I'm going to create a quick group of the drums. What I'm doing here is this is exactly the multitracks you're getting. So if you download the multitracks for free, which they are free, please download them on the link below the video. Oh, thank you, Sheila. That's very nice of you. So if you download all of these, this is the first part of the process when I'm given multitracks, is I just create a group. So what I'm doing here is I'm creating so now this is a group of the live drums. So I'm going to call this live drums, obviously. And I'm going to listen to them just for you to listen. Here's the live drums. Now, the rooms are pretty cranking. Let's go to the chorus. So the first thing I'm going to do, because I haven't mixed this song in several years, and I've never mixed it in the box, as far as I know. Maybe I did for something else, but not to the best of my knowledge. So I'm now going to just here's all the live drums. They're all grouped together. And as you can see, I've got 3 different kick drum mics, and I'm going to do a blend. Because samples are there for an option, but there's tons of different ones. But let's just listen to the drums and do a quick mix. Oh, nicely low-tuned Ludwig snare. I like this kick out. It's giving us a lot of weight. Cool. So that's a really quick blend of the live drums. One more time, so have a quick listen. Thanks, Mark. We're definitely, when Mark's back and we're all out of isolation, I don't expect you to understand. Isolation, for anybody there who knows what I was singing. We should do a course with him. That would be absolutely amazing. It's a little bit kick heavy, but I like that at the moment. So that's not using any samples. Let's see what we have in the way of samples and see what we might want to use. I'm going to solo so you can hear them. Now this PR kick, as you can tell, is all about the attack. The I wanna kick is all about the Now there is attack on it as well. Let's blend the two together. Okay, and now the warehouse kick is an Aerosmith sample. So what it is it's Aerosmith's Warehouse. When I tracked drums at Pandora's Box in Vindaloo, so I was in Pandora's Box, their studio, and next door, they're in these huge warehouses. Next door is a warehouse full of hundreds and hundreds of guitars and cabs and amps and drums, just like a heaven for rock music fans. And so what we did is we set up a Ludwig aluminium or aluminum, no, not aluminum, stainless steel. I don't know why did I say that. A stainless steel drum kit in there. And then I took a Neumann, it was the U67 without the transformer. You know that one? They call it, I don't know what they call it, like a TLM 67 or something. And I stuck that in the back of the warehouse and then I hit the kick. And this is what I got. I think I shortened decay a little bit, but I like what it does. So those three together. They sort of have all the elements. They have the clickiness, they have the big body, and they also have the sustain. So let's just make that one. So what we're going to do is and this is where if you're using folders in Pro Tools or whatever would be useful because you make a blend and it becomes one. But we'll just call it kick samples. And I'm actually going to bring them down. Go back to my live drums and then blend them in. So you can see immediately what it's doing is giving it more of the sound. I'm not using it instead of the kick. I'm just seeing if I can reinforce it. And again, I haven't checked the phase on it yet. We're having a listen. Doodle-doodle-doodle. And none of them are out of phase. Okay, so I'm not sure what you were hearing on the phase. There is going to be on this one here, on the I Want To, there's going to be moments where it goes in and out of phase, but it depends on how you EQ them. We can get to that in a minute. Okay. using the OWC maxed out one of the last iterations of the cheese grater. And yes, you know, the problem we just had was on a Firewire high drive, but yeah, it's maxed out, so the RAM is absolutely wonderful. Okay, so now let's see if we can do a similar thing with those snares. Now, there's tons more snare drum samples than you would ever need, but because, you know, a lot of you here aren't Academy members and you're downloading the multitracks for the first time in your life, I'm giving you a bunch of free samples. So let me explain, because these are fun. These first two here are from Dave Jordan, our good friend Dave Jordan, and they are actually a gunshot that he shot out in the desert, and he recorded it on a mobile DAT recorder. Jesus, Mary and Joseph, that was loud. Bringing it down. So those are actually gunshots, and this is where it gets fun. So we've got the warehouse kickers from Aerosmith. Aerosmith, and these are from Alice in Chains. These are the drum sounds off of Dirt. So this is the drum sample from Dirt. So we'll call that S-gun, it's shotgun, snare. So go back and listen to Dirt, and you'll hear this. I think we have it maxed out at 96 gigs, don't we? It's amazing. Immediately sounds like Alice in Chains. So if I just blend it in lightly like that, it's pretty tasty. Super light. Can you hear it from Dirt, though? Go back to Dirt and listen to that snare, and you'll be like, that's the snare. Yep. Okay, now the gallery snare is exactly that. Now, what I used to do before I had a transient designer, before I now have a transient designer, but before I had one, I made my own transient designer snare samples. So these elements is that. So what this is this just the right amount of attack, but with aggressive compression, so have a listen. So it's all the attack, and I like blending that in. Reed Shippen was talking about this as well in his course, and I've been doing this for 15, 20 years before I could afford a transient designer. But what that allows me to do is like blend in some more attack. So if we put in the drums now, because this is like, we should probably call this properly using of samples. Exactly. Paul's asking, do you use different samples for elements of what was missing in the snare? Yes. And I could mix this song without any samples, but we did that last time, so let's do something different. Okay, so we're going to bring that gallery snare down and then blend it in. Exactly. That's what it's normally called. It's usually called thwack, T-H-W-A-C-K, although Kevin's calling it thwack with an F, which is kind of nice as well. So, yeah, that blends it back in. Now, the D28 is one of my personal favorite snares. It's a tubby snare. I've actually taken it down an octave and some, and this is actually from Jet. So I was recording Jet. There's a sample. Can you put the link to downloading the samples, etc.? The bundle. Also, if you haven't already and you haven't, And if you're not a member of the Academy, just join us, because half the people here are in the Academy. This is fantastic. Anyway, so these snares are all in my bundle as well, so you can download those. But the D28 is actually a sample off of Jet. This is Chris's snare. So when I was working with them, I took his snare. Have a listen. So that's what that is. Put these elements together. It's just the sample. And quite often what I'll do with the D28 is do even more low end. So what I might do is go and grab something Poltech-ish. Could be really nice. So we'll go down to Waves. We'll go to the JJP. It's a Puig Tech. Here. And go to a bit of 100 and put a bit of a boost on it. Let's check the phase of this. Pretty good. Has moments. This is only one of the problems when you're using multiple samples, is to get proper phase correlation. But that's why you end up, so with this one, for instance, so with the shotgun snare here, what I could decide to do is get it out of the way of the low end of the original snare and of that. So if we just go and grab an EQ, for instance, this is going back to our Alice in Chains one, and just go, let's do this. Let's set the high passing. Oops. So we're going to high pass it, maybe about 500, slope it gently, put that on both. We could bus it, but so now what we're doing is we're using this the Alice in Chains sample just to give us mid-range and above. And now the low end is clearer on the Puig, the D28 snare. So do you see my thought process there? I'm taking the shotgun snare, the Dave Jordan, and he did this. He went out into a desert with a shotgun and shot into it out and recorded it. It's pretty crazy. He told me how he did it with a DAT player. Anyway, so he's taken that, and I've wiped off all the low end, and now there's more low end because there's no phase issues now with the D28 snare. So the D28, I'm boosting 100. I might go a little crazier on it. It's pretty tasty. Now let's put that in with the live drums and the kick sample, and this is what we get. Cool. Obviously, it's too loud. But when I've got the blend of the sample, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring that down and blend it back in. So let's go to the AJ Trashy Snare. Now, this is a Trashy Snare sample. She drives me crazy. Anybody? Okay, I'm building a snare that I like. Now there's a room of that same gallery thwack sound. Let's have a listen to that. It was the Fine Young Cannibals. Planet Solanke got it right. We're giving away memberships, so I should have maybe made that. We're going to do it. Nice work there, Planet Solanke. Now, the wood snare, for those of you that care, the wood snare, and there's all of these different ones, is rather special. This is from the Boneyard. Anybody Aerosmith fans? Do you know what the Boneyard is? Anybody? No? The Boneyard? I'm going to take a sip on my tea while the 30-second. Sip of tea. Does anybody know what the Boneyard is? Dum-dum-dum-dum. Has the delay come up yet? The Boneyard. Anybody? Aerosmith fans here? Boneyard. Roland Gift. She drives me crazy. Anybody? Has the question come up yet?
Yeah.
Questions come up? Nobody knows what the Boneyard is? Okay. The Boneyard is Joe Perry's studio. So I recorded these drums, this snare drum at Joe's studio, and it's all of these wooden snares. It's basically a wood snare in the Boneyard. Super spanky. I love it. There it is. The Academy is about mixing and production, and most importantly, it's about community. Everybody, I'll let the community here let you know how amazing it is. Okay, so that's the wood. That's the wood snare. This is Joe Perry's studio. It's a wood snare in the Boneyard. Okay, so we'll call that Boneyard snare. And you could bounce that to one stereo far. Okay, next up is just I wouldn't say generic, but it's a rock snare. And then I have 2 or 3 different elements here. Again, these can all be bounced to one stereo file, and that's what we'll probably do once they're done. This is Joey Kramer's snare. And what it is just the ring. So I'll take the attack from the snare above and then add the ring. And then there's Joey's snare here. Joey likes a ringing snare. Let's bring those elements together. And now these are all for you to mess with and choose from. That's just a good snare sample that I often use. So let's take all of those elements. Yeah, Glenn, exactly. I blend them how I want to hear. So what we've done now is we've made a nice, cool sounding room, slightly roomy snare sound. And, you can use folders in Pro Tools now, so you can hide all of these, or I could just bounce these to one sound. So then suddenly there's not all of these different things. We'll call this snare. We made a bus. We'll call this snare samples. And now they're all bussed together. And the next thing I'm going to do is make these one group. So we'll just call these snare samples as a group. I can make these micro like that. And now they're all in one thing. And you could bounce this to 1. When you got the blend you want, just bounce it to 1. It's done. You know? When stacking samples, where I find the most obvious frequency build up. Well, build up, I think, ultimately the mid-range, of course, because of the gong, gong. So what you end up doing almost on every single snare ever is boosting the top and bottom, boosting the lows and the highs. I mean, that's such a typical thing to do. I have actually done a full blown sample drum kit. We're working with somebody now for that to be released. So let me turn the samples on and off. Yeah, bus equals auxiliary equals sub. You know what I mean? Quite often I'll say the sub bus group auxiliary, you know, it's so many different ways of describing it. It gets very confusing. Okay, so that's now our samples on and off, and you heard what it was doing. Now, there is a program drum part that we can set and listen to. Which can be used subtly, to say the least. So what I would suggest once you're at this stage is to create an all drums, just so you can quickly, so you don't have to keep doing what I'm doing. So now this is all the drums, not the program. So I'm going to make a group and I'm going to call it all in capital. And I do that because when I look to my groups, I want to be able to read it easily. So I just do it in caps. So all drums. So now all the samples, everything. We can leave those program drums out for a second. Let's go to the bass. 3 elements. There's a DI, a Sans amp, and a mic. There's actually a duplicated DI for those of you that want that, in case you want to treat the DIs differently. Let's listen to the DI on its own. I use VCA groups going into consoles. So what I'll do is like we can create VCA groups and we put them into the console. But in the box mix doesn't seem to make any sense. Now you see there, he's slapping the pickup. So just for schnitz and schniggles, I'm going to show you a little silly trick, which you probably will, if you haven't already, you'll know. Let's just go to, what should we do? Give me a second. Where's my Paz frequency? Watch this. So it's very much around here. That's where it's mainly centered on. But there's some low lows in there as well, which is very unfortunate. But I'm hearing a lot of that 3-2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a de-esser. And you guessed it, I'm going to set the de-esser to 3200. Watch this. Have a listen. But he's leaning on that. He's using that slapping the pickup as a way to keep time. I've met quite a few bass players over the year that do that. They're going under, you know, they're doing this tapping like this, and I get it. And they hear it through their speakers and they respond to it. But in DI and pretty much across the area, it's pretty horrible. So, I mean, he was a good bass player. He's not the bass player's no longer in the band, but it's a fairly clean tone. So what I'm gonna do is, frankly, just get rid of these for the second. Have the de-esser on hand. There's a reason for it, but just grab. I suppose I'm just going to be predictable and grab an REQ. Okay, and then low pass. I don't know, 150. So I'm going to high pass about 30 or 40, maybe 30, and then low pass at about 160. Now let's go to that problem area. Now, it's not so much of a problem area. So now that's our low end of our bass taken. Now the Sans amp is literally a Sans amp pedal. Let's see if it's enough. I don't think it's doing enough. So I'm going to do one of two things. I'm going to grab an EQ. I'm hearing myself in the background. And we'll go to a similar area and roll off all the low end. John Dimitri. Yeah, you definitely could. If it was a really bad thing, I would just go in there and, you know, fix it. I'm not going to retrack it for those two little things. It's not a problem. We haven't got to mixing the drums properly yet, so we can change the low end. Not a problem. Okay, now I've wiped that off. I'm just going to grab, you guessed it, a Sans amp. You can tell it's tracked live. This is the bass mic. All right. Now, I've listened to the bass mic and I prefer the low end. The bass mic has better low end than the DI. It seems like the bass, from my recollection as well, was like a 5-string and super modern and very mid-rangey. And if I listen to the DI duplicate here, it just sounds a little too mid-rangey. Have a listen. I mean, the low end's there, but let's go to the bass mic. Maybe I'm wrong. Let's try copying the EQ down, listening to the bass mic. Bass mic. Yep. I prefer the low end on the bass mic, believe it or not. Normally, I don't tend to. I don't tend to. I don't tend to use the bass mic for the low end. I tend to use it for the personality, especially if you're going for a tube amp, because you get a bit of grit and a bit of distortion. The Sam's amp is all about using it really, really low, just to give it some grit. You can use decapitator, you can use Sam's amp, you can use lo-fi, you can use any stock distortion, because it's just there to just bring it in just a shade. It's all about blend. So now I'm trying to decide whether I want this DI for much. Okay, so I used to do this thing in my old studio where I'd mic the bass speaker with another bass speaker, and it would give me this phenomenal low end. So this is what we have. Wow, huge. Let's try this. Massive. So I'm thinking of using a DI in reverse for the highs. Is that enough low end? That's why I wanted to have the DS handy to get rid of that. So what it is, Paul, is it's a speaker miking a speaker. It's just insane how much low end it gives you. Yeah, crazy. So there's no lack of low end on that. Let's be honest, that's pretty insane. Okay, let's decide what we're going to do with this. I'm going to give it a listen. Having a little plug-in schnizzle. Oh yeah, there's no low end on there. Okay. No high end. Yeah, Jack the Rabbit, if you're inside the Academy, there's a ton of producers in there. A ton of people that can help. Ton of multi-instrumentalists, drummers, bass players, keyboard players, songwriters. It's pretty insane. So, bass. So I'm going to group this together. We'll call it a bass sub. This is interesting. I haven't decided on a bass sound, by the way. Have not decided on a bass sound whatsoever. This is just a bass sound. It's not the bass sound. Now, it's actually a 15-inch speaker. It was a big monitor, you know, a floor monitor that was put up again. I want to favor a bit more DI, a bit more low lows. Sorry, a bit less low lows. Oh, no, it's okay. You can bug me, Jack. Now, the duplicates are, because we put effects on them, you do not have to use them. They're just a duplicate of the same track. There's DIs if you want to reamp or use virtual amps. Now we have some fun keys. Cool. So we're getting there. We're getting there. It's just now a balanced mix, and it's taken an hour of us talking and going through some stuff and the technical issues at first, and now we have like a roughed, balanced mix. The drums aren't aggressive enough for me. It doesn't sound like a rock sing-along song yet, but it's got elements that I like. Let's listen to the drums. Cool. Let's listen to those three elements of live kick. I like it. Let's group just the live kick elements together. Call that kick. You guessed it. Live. I'm going to turn off the live drums and the all drums group so I can just work on that. Let's group those together. We'll go for bus 7. we're creating a mono bus for the live kick or bass drum. Hear the kick in, kick out, and the reso. A lot of build up at about 100 on the reso. So let's grab an EQ. I'm going to grab a 4-band. See that 100 build up here that I was hearing? So I'm actually just going to highlight it. Pulling it out. High power. Now I'm going to low pass. So I'm using this kick reso just for Put the kick in, out with it. Okay, let's do a little phase checkaroonie. So the kick out and the reso are fairly accurate. The kick in needs to be delayed by just a handful of samples. It says about 100, so we'll grab delay here and we'll go for time adjuster and we'll make it 100 samples. Let's put them all together. Cool. Let's do a little EQ, SMEQ here on the kick in. Maybe we want to go 4-band actually. So I'm actually going to high pass my kick. The kick in maybe around about 20-ish. Go to about 60 boost. Have a listen. $350 cut. Throwing the kick out. I'm actually going to copy that EQ out to the kick, EQ down to the kick out. The kick reso I'm tempted to take one of the kick samples, maybe the PR kick, which is super short, and do this, just for schnitz and schniggles. So I'm sending from bus 9, and I'm going to open a gate on the Rizzo. The Rizzo, the Rezo. C1 gate. And make that listen to bus 9, so side chaining it. We'll go into pre-fade so I can mute the PR kick so we don't need to hear it. Got the release now set nicely. Throw the elements together. It's kind of a tough one. I like it, and at the same time, I don't, because I feel like the reso is there to add some but you know, there's plugins that do that too. You know, it's kind of a catch-22, isn't it? This is always happens for us. We're like, we know how we can solve a problem in lots of different ways, and is this the right way to solve it? I don't know yet. Maybe bring it down ever so slowly. A lot. I feel like this is a good instance where Andrew's Omni channel, we should put a link up to that underneath, the Omni channel, and we'll put it in the chat. All right, I'm going to put all the drums back in. Throw in the bass, the bass. We are probably going to go in and automate these clickiness down, because that is unbearable one that happened there. It's like the wonders of clip gain, that I can just go in now and take this section, for instance, and just do this. It's insane. Just bring them all down. Woohoo! Cool. Listen to the snare for a second. Super buffy. Not a huge fan for this song. But we'll go in there and brighten it up a little bit. We don't have to do anything special. We'll just do. Do it on both sides, top and bottom. Now I'm going to go into the samples that we had and do something pretty similar. We use a stock plugin here. Okay. Now, one of my favorite of all of those snare sounds, as we were talking about before, is actually Joey's. Which one? This one. Or the one. That snare sample too is just beautiful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a stereo auxiliary and just make that snare alone trigger a reverb. So it's an old Andy Wallace trick. You hear lots of people talking about it, and I've been talking about it for years. So, but what we're doing is we're choosing one of the samples to trigger the reverb so we don't get all the bleed and stuff in it. So we'll send from 11 and 12. We'll make that input 11 and 12. And we'll run an EQ. Well, we won't run an EQ into it yet. We'll just grab. What can we use? We'll use the deverb. It's the most generic reverb. This is a stock reverb. We'll brighten that snare a little bit. So we're giving that a lot more bite. Now this program drums, it's fun, but that low end is killing our kick drum. So we're going to go in there and just get rid of that, those low lows. Doing some overall stuff now to the bass. I'm going to control the low end. A couple of things we like to do is obviously get it out the way of the kick, which doesn't mean removing everything below 60, but just gently high passing it away. But then also on the kick drums, making sure that we don't get too much of a build up between 80 and 110 hertz. So with the live kick is here, I can grab an EQ and reinforce my EQ moves. So quite often, again, I'll just grab an REQ. I'll go super low, get rid of sort of 20, relax the Q. So there's not unwanted boom down there that I don't need. Boost a little bit of the 60, but then come in like the 80 to 100 area and cut some of that. And it can be a little bit of a tighter Q, but that will duck some of the low lows that we want the bass to kind of bloom in. Makes quite a big difference. And those of your Academy members will know that we do a lot of conversation when we're listening back to mixes about low end, about how to get it right. And people have grown so fast inside of the Academy. Okay, speaking of which, we're going to do a giveaway. This is for a 1-year membership to the Academy. If you're already a member of the Academy, you get an extra year. So what do we want to know? There's 340 people watching. Please, first of all, hit the like button. I would really appreciate if you could hit the like button. That would be amazing. But I want to know, I suppose, what could we ask? What is your favorite EQ plugin? Do you have a favorite EQ plugin? Are you using stock EQs? I tend to use the Renaissance EQ like stock. They become just my go-to. Don't worry about lights. Use your ears. The click indicators can quite early on show something, but you have to have a listen. If we printed that, you wouldn't hear any clipping. So don't get too concerned about that stuff. You know, if everything was red lighting solidly across your mix, it would sound like absolute butt. But when it comes to transient, seeing the occasional thing, remember, it's just the transient is not going to kill you. So what is your... Thank you, Tom. Smash that like button. That would be amazing. 340 people. Hit it twice. So stock EQ. Eric is going to choose somebody at random. Let us know what what you like to use. What's your favorite EQ? And also with 32-bit point floating, the likelihood of you clipping is quite remote these days. All right, no red light to appease. No audible difference. But it's worth pointing out. This thing that's providing the movement's quite fun. Getting a little annoying. Chris Ibbotson, you're not helping your cause. Chris Ibbetson's... Wait there. Chris, do you? I don't know. Let me take a guess. Do you use FabFilter Pro Q3 in Cubase? I just wonder. Do you, Chris? He's trying to get Alexi, because Alexi that one time did it like 50 times as well. Ah, you can't. There's only one Alexi. Well, there's a few Alexis, but there's only one Alexi that can win everything.
Dumb me up, dumb me down, baby, shut me up, steal the truth, hate me, I'll be yours till I die, till I die, till I die crazy, pull me in, drag me down, make
Mark Woofter, love it.
dumb me up, dumb me down, baby, shut me up, steal the truth, hate me, I'll be yours till I die, till I die, till I die crazy, pull me in, drag me down. Are you satisfied? War after war after war with me. Dumb me up, dumb me down, baby, shut me up, steal the truth, hate me, I'll be yours till I die.
Okay, let's get all these backgrounds, make them into a group.
Dumb me up, dumb me down, baby, shut me up, steal the truth, hate me, I'll be yours till I die, till I die, till I die crazy, pull me in, drag.
Just creating groups.
Hate me, I'll be yours till I die, till I die, till I die crazy.
Cool. So that's really, really quick rough mix.
With me, with me. Dumb me up, dumb me down, baby, shut me up, steal the truth, hate me, I'll be yours till I die, till I die, till I die crazy, pull me in, drag me down. Lie for you, break me, I'll be yours till I die, till I die, till I die crazy. I guess I'll get what I deserve.
You've been following. That was Eric's idea to copy and paste it. Eric, are you in collusion with Chris?
I swear I'm not.
We're busting Eric. Ah, what are you doing? Are you sending him like gifts? Pick me, pick me.
Is this normal? How it became? And war after war after war with me. Are you satisfied the way I bleed? And war after war with me. Dumb me up, dumb me down, baby, shut me up, steal the truth, hate me, I'll be yours till I die, till I die, till I die crazy, pull me in, drag me down, make me cry for you, lie for you, break me, I'll be yours till I die, till I die, till I die crazy. I guess I'll get what I deserve over and over.
Cool. So we just had I had a very, very quick listen to the hybrid mix. Obviously, we're nowhere near mixed yet, but we're getting there. We're getting the power. How many tracks is that? Well, it really depends because, you know, Craig, because There's like tons of backgrounds which could be bounced to a stereo pair. There's some samples we did which could be bounced to a stereo pair. There's sometimes a lot of confusion. It's a very good question, Craig. I appreciate it. A lot of confusion when people say there's a lot of tracks. Is it a lot of tracks are the same thing? If it is, you can bounce them to stereo. Now that we've made that, for instance, those drum samples that we like, every single one of those could be bounced to a stereo file. So there you go. All of the drums, the drum samples, boom, stereo file. All of the backgrounds could be a stereo file. So this is the difference between, mentality of working on tape and the mentality of working in digital. Quite often people say to me, oh my God, I got this track and it had 32 channels of backgrounds. And I'm like, sure, sounds like the average Queen song. All they would do is bounce that down. So if instead of like freaking out because, oh my God, there's 32 channels of backgrounds, have the blend that they like and then bounce into a stereo file. And then there's the end of the discussion of like, oh, so many tracks. We get kind of a little bit, we fool ourselves to get into the sort of, the trolling world of the internet where everything's, oh my God, oh no, so many tracks. The thing is like, we got 8 different snare samples that we messed with there to create a nice snare that we liked. The thing is, bounce it to a stereo pair. And then suddenly it's like, oh my God, 8 stereo, 8 files. Now it's just a stereo pair. Oh my God, backgrounds. It's pretty funny that we get a little worried about those things because the best music that we loved was layers and layers of stuff of people bouncing down. The Beatles. Pull it up, Sgt. Pepper's. It's very complex if it was broken out into many tracks. However, they're using 2 4-track machines, synced together, bouncing backwards and forwards. Sometimes they would sync that then to a 2-track and then dump the 2-track back to the 4-track and then overdub to that. So, some of their tracks may have been into the multiple digits, but they were all summed together. So if you want in digital, think that way as well, rather than like, telling the person who sent you tracks, oh my God, you've sent me so many tracks. Ask them, hey, can all these backgrounds be on a stereo pair? Do you have a blend you like? And get them to bounce it. What tends to happen is mixers, let's be honest, got lazy. They got used to things being recorded how they were supposed to be, and that's why you hear so many guys go, oh, I can't believe it. Well, it's like, what? Just ask them to commit. Say, hey, I wanted to commit. Because otherwise, what's happening is younger artists and bands are inexperienced, and God bless them, and I'm totally supportive of it, and they send the big mixer all of the tracks, hoping that the big mixer can help them. And it's our jobs as professionals, it's our jobs to help people, and not, thank you, yeah, Monty Python moment, and not to be sort of critical and put others down. I know that's not a popular thing to say, and I'll get far more YouTube viewers if I'm wagging a finger and telling everybody off all the time. I know that. I'm not stupid. I can see that, the criticism and the videos where you're telling off each other, but that's just not going to be my style, because in the real world it doesn't get you anywhere. It makes you successful on YouTube, and you can get millions of followers by telling people off and being superior. But that's just not what we're about. What we're about here is helping each other and and doing it really, really well. You know what I mean? And being supportive of each other. So here we go. Here's all of the drums. And I've got the tom samples in as well now.
Guess I'll get what I deserve over and over again for you. I'll take my...
Oh, thank you, Podcast Stage. I just recently discovered Podcast Stage's channel. He left me a nice comment. So thank you ever so much, and I just went and checked it out. He also does wonderful reviews on microphones. I want to do a review with him because I feel like it's going to be really... I think it would be really fun to have 2 different perspectives. We should pick a microphone and both review it and do a video together. I think that'd be really, really wonderful. So I love seeing other people doing what we do and keeping it positive, because ultimately, the sort of telling each other off doesn't really help, does it? And I'm certainly, yes, I've got lots of gold and platinum records. I'm really, really blessed. But to believe that I'm some kind of genius because of it is really not fair, is it? Because it's all about work and commitment and taking your passion and putting it into something we love. So anybody that believes in that, full blown. And if you want to check out our academy, that's what we permeate, that's what we perpetuate, is a positive idea of helping each other. And I can tell you, you can go back and listen to people's first mixes and where they are now and their productions. It's insane. I mean, Anita and Sheila, and I'm seeing who else is here, and Tom and Chris. Chris is insanely talented. All of these people can attest to it. It's really wonderful. Hey, Guitar Fever LA, don't worry about being late. We're going to be here for a while. We're just going to try and do as much on this as possible. Could you do me a favor, young Eric, and grab me my power supply, because my laptop is about to die. Let's do another giveaway. Talking of Academy, a number of years membership to the Academy. We found out what EQ plugin you like. I'm not a genius, Andre. I'm sure there's some geniuses watching, but I'm certainly not one. Review a cathedral pipes mic. That would be fun. Here. Thank you ever so much. So, hey, I've asked this question before. You know what I haven't. If this is a question I asked of our dear departed friend, Ed Cherney, and he told me his essential piece of equipment was an SM7. What, out of all of you here, what is your one essential piece of equipment that you cannot live without? What is it that, you know, if the studio was on fire, what would you run in and grab? And it could be, I know, the backup drives, like we get that one a lot. You know, all the practical things. What I mean is, like, practical aside, like, absolutely love it. Like this microphone, that acoustic guitar. I don't know. What is the one thing? Because I know the backup drives is obviously the obvious answer. And I think I asked that question before, and I think 50% of people said that. And I totally relate. But to me, if the studio was on fire and I could only grab one piece of equipment. Wow. I got to think about this a second. What would I grab? What would I grab? I might grab that Yamaha acoustic. I don't have to find out where it is. Is it in the 70s one? It's in there. Because I wrote most of the biggest songs I ever wrote on that. Probably that acoustic guitar, because I know that, like, something I'm emotionally connected to. There's so many good guitars in here. The weirdest thing is like the Yamaha Revstar. I'm not kidding. There's no link to buy it. Don't worry. The Yamaha Revstar might be the one. Apollo. One piece of equipment. Your wife. Okay. No human beings, just equipment. Now you're going to tell me your wife's a robot. My lunchbox. My computer. I'm hungry too, by the way. I hear you all. Jazzmaster, Fender bass. Oh, some things are going fast. Yeah, it's probably my 70s Yamaha acoustic. I have so much emotional attachment to that. That's why I'm such a big fan of Yamaha. Also a big fan of Fender. Love my Acoustasonics. I'm not going to, like, get away from this. This is a great guitar. Oh, Duesenberg. You have a Duesenberg? Yeah, that's a beautiful guitar. Harmonica collection, Gibson Les Paul. I won't read the rest of the comment. Bass. Lots of instruments. I like that. C414. That's good. The dog, says Jenny. That's nice. I like that. Vintage guitar. Jens, what's your vintage guitar? Chris says his copy and paste machine. Chris, you really don't want to win. And by the way, if you're already a member of the Academy, you get a free year. Grab the fire extinguisher. Oh, okay. Okay. I would like to award that, but I think, Chris and his copy and paste. Loudon, the dog, the Loudon acoustics, beautiful. More Loudon. Lots of people have Loudons. Those are lovely. B&W Matrix, but the file is too heavy to rescue it. Chris won't stop with the copy of it. Henning with his Duesenberg. Oh, nice. Ibanez Roadster too. I like that. I like that because I understand that. Similar feeling to me in the Yamaha. Eric's choosing, though. You can't court me. Eric's choosing at random, by the way, as well. Best Buy just told me my package has been delivered. Thank you, Best Buy. Bobby says, oh, Breedlove. Ooh, Bobby, you're posh. That's beautiful. Wow. Gonna listen a bit more. Okay. What else we got? Yeah, and vintage guitar is a Goya Rangemaster from '67. Epiphone Casino, John Lennon limited edition. Beautiful. Tom says his drums.
With me, numb me up, dumb me down, baby, shut me up, steal the truth, hate me, I'll be yours till I die, till I die, till I die crazy, blow me in.
Cool. I'm liking where we are with this mix. It needs to be a little brighter overall, a little less stodgy, a little bit less kind of going on here. So the way to do that is just kind of get in there and carve out some low mids, carve out some low end where it's starting to build up a bit. We've done a bit of work on the bass, done a bit of work on drums. Let's have a listen to these acoustics and stuff. Here's the acoustic guitar. I believe this actually was my Yamaha 70s acoustic. It's thick. I think when we wrote this song, I don't know if David from the band is here, we ended up doing this, was it in open chords? Yeah, you can play along with this for those that are inclined by doing the open. So the minor there with. Love his guitar. I love this guitar so much, and the more people say they don't like it, the more I like it. It's really useful for us because it's small, light, it's about very portable, sounds good. I like playing acoustic instruments more than electrics because I don't always get to plug in acoustic guitars. I'm sitting here, Eric's working on something, I'm sitting in the back practicing, probably driving him nuts. Do I drive you nuts? He's like, no, Warren. No, Warren, you do not drive me nuts. Because he's obviously the triggers. Yeah. Anyway, we have another mix competition coming up in a week. So let's carve out some of that low end. Let's go stockish. What should we use? What's the first EQ that comes up? The API. We're going to use this because it's the first one that comes up. Going to center that so it's easier to hear. It's very bratty, isn't it? It's like he's playing it like super aggressively. It's not a pretty sound. You can tell the low end is really muddy in the way. Let's bring the bass in. See, now, all these years later, I just retracked that acoustic. I think sometimes you're working with bands, you kind of let everything go, but I just retrack that. I think it could be a better performance, not quite so smashed. I'm going to put a de-esser on it, just so I can boost the high end to make it feel more open, but without making it overly aggressive. Let's throw in some drums. What's your question, Steve? If you do donate towards Buy Eric lunch, you know, which is always useful. The starving. He's starving. Warren doesn't feed me. If you want to donate to the Buy Eric lunch fund, I think we've already got. What did we get? We got $5 towards Buy Eric lunch that we did earlier. So we're going to get from the Canyon store today. We're going to get a sandwich from the Canyon store. For those of you that live in Laurel Canyon, you know what I'm talking about. All right, let's give it a quick listen. But Stan, if you'd like to do that, great. Otherwise, please ask a question, and hopefully I will see it. But if you do donate to Eric's lunch, I definitely will see it. But either way. It's a good point. 0101 says, finds it difficult to hear between expensive EQs and cheaper ones. I agree a lot of the time. Sometimes what's the benefit of an expensive emulation isn't really that necessary. You know, it really depends. If you're using it for generic boosts and cuts and, you know, high passing and low passing, I always go for the Renaissance EQs. They are my quick, easy to use. They do everything I needed to do EQ. And I think you can probably buy it from Waze for about, you know, blah, blah, blah dollars. They're usually very inexpensive. Hey, podcast stage just bought Eric lunch. $20. That's chips, a sandwich, and a drink. Thank you. Thank you. There you go. Oh, we bought podcast stage bought Eric his lunch. Okay. So just because we can on the mandolin, I know this might sound silly because there's no real low end in there, but we're going to high pass anyway because why the heck, you know, why the heck not? Sometimes you just want to be smart about it and just get rid of some of that lows that's in the way, even if it doesn't feel like they're there. I can hear because it's tracked live. Because the musicians are playing in different parts of the room, tracking live, you can hear the bleeding through into the overdub room, can't you? You can listen to it. I can hear it. I'll prove it. Let's grab a C4. Here. You hear that? Cool. So we don't need that. Let's get rid of the C4. Just an illustration. There it is. And if you're worried about the fundamental low end, then what you can do is just boost it a little bit where you want to hear it. I'm actually enjoying that mid. Listen to that bass bleeding through the wall, and then hear it with the EQ in and hear it just go away. Now, that might not seem a big deal. Put that across 20 tracks. It's not going to thin it out because that's low end that's bleeding through and adding mud. So, quite smart. Let's pan that away from the acoustic guitar. There's some thickness on the acoustic that I'm missing. I think it might be in the mid-range. I'm actually going to take both of those plugins off. I'm actually going to copy the mandolin settings to the acoustic. You might think I'm crazy. Let's have a listen. Now, it's not pretty in solo. It's not the best acoustic guitar sound I've ever heard in solo. No, it's not. It's not even that good, let alone really good. It's just, now, so let's just add in the bass and have a listen. I like it. You've got to see, one of the things is when I'm teaching, I listen to things more in solo than when I'm working. But I have to be able to do this for you so you can see what I'm doing. But you can see immediately in solo, you're like, sounds like mid-rangey and not too pretty. However, with the other instruments, suddenly it's like, oh, that makes sense. I even want to go one stage further. So let's go to an REQ4 and swap out the 6 and the 4 because I'm going to get rid of the high highs. So I'm actually low passing, removing the high end above about 6 or 7K. So now cymbals, top of the snare, everything will start to like come to life. And the vocal. And this goes back to one of our earliest questions about like how do you control mixes inside of, phones and laptops and all that kind of stuff. And this is solving the problem. What we're doing is we're like getting rid of like unwanted high end, unwanted low end, so that you're not just hearing like we were talking about with a lot of those like mid-late 90s, early 2000s kind of rock mixes, which are like, so washy. Immediately feels better. Let's listen to these electrics and solo. Like them. But again, do we want the lows? Boom, 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 boom. Center that one. So we have to decide, is the bass doing what we want down there? I agree, Hendrik. You don't need to mix in solo. Try to avoid it at all costs. However, when you're teaching and you're showing people stuff, it's good to move in and out of solo. But you don't have to be in solo. But you also don't have to mix not in solo or in solo. There's no real rules. Bob Clearmountain is the one guy that when he told me he doesn't mix in solo, I believed. I've been in a room with plenty of other people that mix, and they all solo. You can name them all. But Bob, when he said I don't solo, I believe him. We're going to go in and draw out those noises on the bass. Yep, we're going to draw that out. It's horrible. Absolute. Yeah, where he's hitting it. Uh-huh. Actually, tempted to go one stage further. Just mute it. Yep. When in doubt, mute. Yep. Be gone, foul noise. I'm just tabbing to transients, making it quicker. All right, let's copy that EQ to the other one. Just pan them wide and have a... Cool. Throw in the mandolin and the acoustic. Real Raven 2000. Yay, got mentioned again. I gotta solo these guitars because I don't remember what they are. Let's try to copy this EQ down.
I'll be yours till I die, till I die, till I die.
Yeah, I know. Quite often, I change strings frequently when we're recording. When we were doing the Aerosmith record, you know, when you had unlimited budget and you had a full-time tech there. We did this one guitar sound about a month beforehand, and when we came to recreate the guitar sound, we had the most incredible notes of mic placement, EQ, boost cuts, pedals, and everything. We couldn't get the guitar sound back, and the one difference was the strings were old. They hadn't been changed in a month. So once we changed the strings, guitar sound came back. So there is, because it was fresh strings the first time around, now it's a month later. So, you know, there is always that consideration. I'll tell you a really crazy story. I've never told this story publicly before. Okay, so when I was a kid, this is a good story. Are you sitting comfortably, everybody? Do you have your cup of PG Tips ready like I do? Episode 4.1.2.6.7, Storytime with Warren. With your PG Tips. Wait there. Can you see it? A little comic relief from PG. Is it full screen? A little comic relief from PG Tips. Here's the tea time. Tea time with Warren. Okay, so when I was about 16 years old, I was working on a Saturday job at Kingfisher Music Company in Fleet in Hampshire. And this was the nearest town. I grew up in Crookham Village. This is the nearest town to where I lived. And it also was like the big rival at the time to Anderton's, which I eventually ended up going to work for. But what was wonderful about Kingfisher was Queen used to shop there. Yeah, Queen. So there I am a teenager, and I'm working in a store that Queen would come in and buy gear from. I remember being 11 or 12 years old and going to the music store and going to Kingfisher, and on the wall was a Telecaster, and it sold Queen. It said sold Queen Productions. That was on a Saturday when I was off from school. That Thursday, for those of you from the UK, remember, it was Top of the Pops. And on Top of the Pops, Brian May, on Top of the Pops, was playing on the Telecaster. So he bought that guitar on a Saturday and used it live on Top of the Pops. I remember just being like, I went up and saw that guitar. I could touch that guitar, and Brian May was playing it. So then flash forward a few years. Now I'm a teenager and I'm working in that music store. And they came in. Brian came in. When I wasn't there, came in and bought a Gibson Chet Atkins. And they had two Gibson Chet Atkins on the wall. And he came in and bought the guitar. Now flash forward, I don't know, a month later, 3 weeks later, Bob, who was the guitar tech there, very talented, who actually worked on Brian's guitars, gets a phone call from somebody in Queen's office, you know, somebody on the tech. Maybe it was the assistant engineer, maybe calls up and says, can you get us the strings that were on the Gibson Chet Atkins? Because obviously they were recording and they wanted some fresh strings, probably for the same reason. Well, you're going to find out it was for the same reason. So Bob gets on the phone. This is pre-internet. This is a long time ago when I was 16 years old. So sunny. So Bob gets on the phone, calls Rose Morris, for those of you that remember Rose Morris. I believe Rose Morris in England, hopefully they still exist, in the UK, were the distributors for Gibson. So he calls up Rose Morris. Oh, Sven just bought me lunch. Yay. Thank you. We both got lunch now. Hey. Thank you. So he calls up Rose Morris and says, hey, got an inquiry from Brian May of Queen. They want to get a set of strings that match the ones, because they've been recording. And Rose Morris go, I'm really sorry, but we don't use that string manufacturer anymore. Or something had changed. For some reason they couldn't get the strings. So Bob calls back up Queen Productions and says, hey, I'm really sorry. In the middle of recording, we can't get those strings. So they go, okay, hold on a second. And then comes back and says, hey, we noticed when we were in, there was two of those guitars on the wall. Do you still have the second guitar? You know what the punchline is? Bob goes, oh, yeah, it's still up here. Go, oh, cool. Can you wrap it up for us? We'll come and pick it up. Bada boom, bada bing. They were in the middle of recording, and they'd recorded something, and they needed to punch in and fix like a month later. By this stage, the guitar had probably been played 1,000 times, and they couldn't get the tone. But the other guitar was on the wall and probably been played once since then, maybe even not at all, and the strings were fresher, so they bought it. They bought the other guitar. And I know that sounds excessive, but that is what you do when you're making a record. That's what Aerosmith would do. That's what people would do. They needed that same sound, so they bought the guitar with the fresher strings on it, so they could punch in and fix the part. Pretty crazy. Back in the day when we had VCRs, says Adam. Yep. That was Storytime with Warren and PG Tips, brought to you by PG Tips. If only they would sponsor me. PG Tips, sponsor me. All right, we're going to do one more giveaway, and then Eric and I are going to get some lunch. We'll carry on mixing this song in the Academy as well. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for buying my lunch and buying Eric's. I really appreciate it. There's 300-odd people watching. Please hit that like button if you haven't already. And we're going to do one more giveaway. What did we ask? We asked favorite plugins.
The drummer from Lovesick Radio just commented.
Hey, where are you? Matt. Yay. Hey, Matt, how are you? Lovely to see you. Cray indeed. That's rather wonderful. Oh, I didn't get to hand it to Brian personally. That would have been amazing. We can talk about Brian May another time. It's probably one of the only few people I would get very starstruck with. I've got to meet and work with some of the biggest people of all time. I got to hang out with Jeff Beck, Eddie Van Halen, Joe Perry, Ace Frehley. Ah, thank you. Thank you for the lunch. I appreciate it. So, yeah, I've had all those wonderful experiences, but Brian was probably somebody I'd be a little starstruck with, just because, my favorite band from a child. Okay, all right, here's an easy one. Who's your favorite band? Who's your favorite artist, singer, musician, band? Who is it? And Eric will pick at random, and we're going to listen to where we are so far on the mix from the top. Bear in mind, we have done nothing with the vocals.
Is this normal? How it became, and war after war after war with me. Are you satisfied the way I breathe?
we have those have those gang vocals louder, Warren? Let's just turn those down before we kill everybody. So we'll call those gang vox. Bring them all down.
Down 6 feet in the dirt. Do I have to kill myself for you to feel me hurt? Numb me up, dumb me down, baby, shut me up, steal the truth, hate me, I'll be yours till I die, till I die, till I die crazy.
Yay! That was a lot of fun. Obviously, we've done no vocal treatment whatsoever. We haven't done any reverbs or delays or anything except on the snare. That's the only thing we've done. Oh, King Crimson, yes. I'm a huge King Crimson fan. I'm glad everybody keeps going, though, with answers. That's absolutely fantastic. Yeah, that was loud, wasn't it? More gang vocals. Wasn't enough, says Dustin. Yeah, King Crimson, yeah, amazing, amazing, huge fan. Please, if you haven't already hit that like button, hit the like button. That was for a year's membership of the Academy. Thank you ever so much. It's been a blast. We'll carry on mixing this another time. Obviously, we still need to do vocals. We still need to put some more effects in there. But in general, it's come on pretty well. Let's have a listen to the chorus, bearing in mind there are no effects.
With me. Numb me up, dumb me down, baby, shut me up, steal the truth. I'll be yours till I die, till I die, till I die crazy. Pull me in, drag me down, make me cry for you, lie for you, break me. I'll be yours till I die.
I think I like our new mix a little bit more. It's super bright, the original Through the Console. The snare's a little splattered, isn't it? And I think where we're going is going to be better. Have a listen.
With me. Numb me up, dumb me down, baby, shut me up, steal the truth, hate me, I'll be yours till I die, till I die. I die crazy, pull me in, drag me down, make me cry for you, lie for you, break me, I'll be yours.
Oh, to answer that question, we actually just did a course. We did some templates from Ken Sluter, the great Ken Sluter, and we had them transferred into, we had Pro Tools. Do we have Reaper done yet? Do we had Studio One, Reaper? We're trying to get all of our courses and everything translated into every DAW. It's going to take some time. Bear with me. But, you know, the whole thing about the Academy is just to make it the biggest and best. And, yeah, it'll take some time, but we're getting there. We're getting better all the time. And the reason why we're getting better is because there's so many incredible people here making it so supportive. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for buying us lunch. That was rather wonderful. I'm really happy where this mix is going. It still needs some work, but I think we're going to have a better mix than we did when we mixed through a console. This was actually mixed through a Neve console originally. A Neve. My old Neve 8058. All right, have a marvelous time. We're going to get some lunch now. Thank you ever so much. Speak to you all soon. Thanks for bearing with us through the technical thing. Before you leave, if you haven't already, please hit the like button and please share. This is going to stay up, so if you want to come back and check it out later. Have a marvelous time recording and mixing. See you all soon. Bye.